you have a credit card? How many of you have knowingly paid a swipe fee? Well, during 2012, a case was settled between Visa, MasterCard, and several national banks on the issue of credit card swipe fees. Swipe fees are set by banks and are approximately 2 to 4% of each credit card purchase. Now, swipe fees that used to be paid by businesses can be deferred to the customers, as you can see on this diagram. The issue of credit card swipe fees is complicated with a variety of gains or losses for each party involved, but some of these parties have a choice to make about the new changes in legislation. The issue of credit card swipe fees is very broad, so we will discuss the issue by looking at credit card companies, then businesses, banks, and finally customers.
Hi, how are you doing today?
Good. I just got my new credit card and would like to do some shopping.
Well, if you use your credit card here, you'll have to pay a 3% swipe fee.
Give me a minute. I'll need to call my credit card company. Hi, I had a question about the swipe fee that I'm going to be charged.
Alright, well I appreciate your call and I'll try to give you as much information as I can. Us credit card companies are powerhouse industries that provide millions of customers a convenient way of paying for their goods and services. We made credit cards to help people that need money now that will pay it off later with a little interest. Us credit card companies work with the banks to decide who can qualify for the credit card and how much the card will cost with fees and interest rates. Some examples of large credit card companies are Visa, MasterCard, and American Express. And after I say that, I have a Visa credit card that has my picture on it.
Mm-hmm.
So I was thinking I'd pull that out and just show the class that, just an extra visual.
Mm-hmm. Are you going to have them passed around?
That would be really sketch.
That's what I was saying. And I guess I could say I'm not gonna pass it around because I don't want you guys to have my credit card number.
Yeah.
I could say that just for.
From.
Credit cards are a very innovative way for paying for goods, but there is also much controversy. The main controversy that has been the topic of our project is the credit card swipe fee, the 2 to 4% fee that is charged per transaction that you are wondering about. The reason that we have to charge the swipe fee is because due to the cost of processing transactions and to cover the losses from fraud, we need to set a swipe fee for each transaction. After the $7.5 billion settlement, retailers can now choose whether or not you have to pay the credit card swipe fee or if they're going to take the charge. There are 10 states in the United States that have laws against any extra surcharges such as this fee, but the other 40 states' businesses can now choose whether or not you are going to have to pay for the fee. It's a very positive thing for businesses because they can provide incentives for other paying methods such as cash or debit or PayPal, but it is a negative effect on the credit card companies because people are realizing that they are just in it for the money, or people are starting to realize that credit cards are too expensive and it is causing massive amounts of debt. In 2010, there was 609.8 million credit cards held by U.S. citizens, a statistic by Ben Woolsey, implying that credit cards are a vital part of the economy. And then in 2011, the consumer debt in the United States was $2.5 trillion, a statistic by Matt Schultz. Although the 2 to 4% may seem like a small amount, but with the millions of customers and with multiple credit cards, the swipe fees will account for over $30 billion a year. The swipe fee is just one of many controversies with the usage of credit cards, and the future will only bring more controversy as we progress towards better currency use technology.
Thank you for all that information. It really helped.
Did you get things cleared up?
Somewhat, but I still don't understand how this works for you guys.
These sorts of swipe fees have a bigger impact on the smaller businesses. You will find that the majority of businesses charging these fees to their customers will be the smaller ones. This is because they tend to lose more money allowing their customers to pay with their credit cards. Some swipe fees can be up to 25 to 50 cents per swipe or transaction. Many small businesses have a minimum cost that you have to spend in order to use your card. This is because they won't have enough profit to cover the fee if the customer doesn't pay. Businesses know that customers don't want to pay more fees, and they are hesitant to charge their customers this fee. It's mandatory for them to pay if the fees are too high and the business can't afford it, or if the business previously hasn't allowed their customers to pay with credit cards and will now allow them to if they pay the fee themselves. If their customers pay, it will offer the very small businesses a chance to grow and expand. Not all businesses will charge this fee. The law only allows the businesses the opportunity to charge their customers. This doesn't mean that they will actually be charging them. You can still avoid this fee by paying with cash or debit. The businesses who charge the fee are required to inform you that they are charging you before you pay, and they will also be printed on your receipt.
Many reasons that businesses who pay the fee, some are big and some are small. Well, mostly are big and some are small, but it's more difficult for smaller businesses. Many businesses pay fees themselves. The reasoning behind paying the swipe fee is because it is already allocated into their budgets and fear of losing customers, and also they already consider the fees already. The fees that some businesses do pay from the article rates for credit card processing, small business by bank card. There's a per transaction fee, which is what we're talking about, is a swipe fee that every time you swipe your card, it's 2 to 4% of your transaction. And then there's also monthly rates where there's a minimal rate that they have to use your card, and if the minimum rate is not met, then you have to pay a fee to cover the costs. And then there's an initial fee where you have to pay for the usage of the card. And then there are more fees as well, but we'd be here for a while. First concern is lost customers. This will affect small businesses rather than large. Small business owners in the article, local merchants not crazy about swipe fee, from CNN Money, and there's a small business owner and he lives in Oregon, and this is a quote from the article by Parija Calvilance. I have to practice that. About 85% of his customer use credit cards, but Hauser does not charge them a surcharge, and it costs him $19,000 in 2011. Another reason that small businesses pay for the fee is because they already allocate the fees already. According to how Durbin set credit card fee backfired on merchants by Eamon Murphy, it states credit card companies lowered the fees from 44 cents to 22 cents. So this will help small businesses pay the fee. Business owner concerns have left the small business owners in a debacle. Their concerns and reasonings are the loss of customers, and they already pay the fees. It's ultimately up to the customer to decide.
That makes sense, but why are there swipe fees in the first place?
Payment by credit card has become a common occurrence in today's society. But how does the credit card system work? Banks are largely responsible for the credit card system. They are actively involved in 4 aspects, which I will discuss in detail. These parts of the credit card system are issuing credit cards, processing credit cards, risk from credit cards, and setting swipe fees for them. Banks are responsible for issuing credit cards. There are 3 types of banks involved in each credit card issuance process. Issuing banks are in charge of issuing credit cards to the cardholders. Acquiring banks handle the deposits to merchants that result from credit card transactions, and agent banks issue credit cards through another bank's credit card services. The administrator of National Bank's article, Credit Card Lending, discusses the 2 kinds of credit cards that banks issue. General label credit cards are the most widely used type of credit card. When banks pay to be members of a payment network, such as Visa or MasterCard, they will issue general label credit cards. They can be used anywhere that credit cards are accepted. And there are also versions of general label credit cards, such as Corporate and Affinity, that offer perks for using the credit card or are used for expense accounts. private label credit cards are not part of a payment network, but are the result of a contract between a bank and a retailer. These are commonly referred to as store credit cards. For private label cards, the acquiring bank and the issuing bank are the same. After looking at the general information behind issuing credit cards, let's look at how a credit card transaction is processed. According to a PBS article entitled Electric Money, for each credit card transaction, 2 banks are involved. As you can see from this diagram, first the customer swipes their credit card. The credit card information is authorized by the credit card network. The merchandise is paid for by the issuing bank. It transfers money to the business's account at the acquiring bank. The issuing bank then places a charge on the customer's bill. Now that everyone has an understanding of the basics of how the credit card system works, we can look deeper into the risk involved in the credit card system. The article Credit Card Lending from the Administrator of National Banks explains the 7 forms of risks that banks can incur. Credit risk is the risk from a cardholder not meeting the terms of the contract they signed with the bank. This makes up the largest portion of risk for banks that issue credit cards. The other types of risk involved are listed here, but these kinds of risks are less significant to the bank. Combined, these risks amount to the cost that banks have to cover, and these risks can explain why banks have charges and fees for their credit card holders. Banks use the information they have about their risk to set swipe fees for their cardholders. They set interchange rates, which are another name for swipe fees. Swipe fees are charged each time a credit card is used, and the purpose is to cover the cost of handling credit card transactions and also to cover the credit risk involved. Many factors come into play when setting interchange rates. This is because banks have different costs and different levels of risk. In his article, Debit or Credit, Justin Pritchard discusses how swipe fees apply to credit card transactions and some debit card transactions. Debit cards have a credit card logo on them, meaning that they are run through the same infrastructure as credit cards. Debit cards can be processed as either online or offline transactions. An online transaction is when a debit card is processed as a debit transaction, or when you would enter your PIN. The bank still sometimes charges a fee, but if they do, it's minimal and usually amounts to less than 10 cents. A debit card can also be swiped as an offline transaction or a credit transaction. An offline transaction is considered the same as any other credit card transaction, and you're charged the same standard 2 to 4% swipe fee. Looking at the graph, you can see how increasing interchange rates have affected the number of debit card transactions. Banks also charge swipe fees to make a profit. They use their interchange revenue to cover the costs from issuing credit cards. The amount of revenue left over after the costs have been offset is a profit for the banks. Banks must be able to cover their costs in order to run their business and provide their services. Now that we have looked at issuing credit cards, processing credit cards, risks from credit cards, and setting swipe fees for credit cards, we can see how this comes into play with the new regulations. Although new legislation dictates who may be responsible for paying swipe fees, banks will continue to collect the same amounts from swipe fees as in the past.
Well, thank you. This has been a lot of information, but what is this going to mean for the customers? Currently, 10 states already outlaw the fee. These states include California, Colorado, Connecticut, Florida, Kansas, Maine, Massachusetts, New York, Oklahoma, and Texas. Residents or customers in these states will continue to not have to pay the fee. According to Morgan Stanley, these 10 states currently make up 42% of the United States retail sales. Customers' awareness of the fees. Upon entering the store, merchants will be required to have a sign on the door that clearly states if and how much the store will charge for the use of their credit card. When you are ready to make your purchase, the cashier will also be required to tell you about the fee and make sure you still wish to make your purchase. Possible negative outcomes with this fee: if the stores pass the fee along to the customers, you will be forced to pay the fee when you wish to use your credit card. If the merchant does pay the fee, this may force smaller stores to raise the price of their product to make up for the loss of revenue. The proposed agreement between MasterCard and Visa does not set a ceiling on how high they can raise the fees. And then I'll have a site for that I haven't added. And many big businesses are against it and feel it is bad news for customers. As reported by CNN.com, Target is on record saying that the agreement is, quote, bad for both retailers and consumers. positive outcomes from the fee, merchants will likely offer incentives or discounts for cash transactions or alternate payment methods such as PayPal or debit card. This is due to the businesses having to pay for the use of the credit cards. If businesses are going to make the customers pay the fee, this will open up promotional opportunities for companies to provide the consumer. These promotions will in turn create competition between the companies for the customer service, which will be very good for the consumers.
To sum it all up, this is still a highly debated issue, and banks will still profit, but credit card companies will also profit less. And also small businesses will have the customer pay. The swipe fee allows the small businesses to have customers use their cards. But while the larger and some small businesses who pay the fee have doubts and mainly do not want to lose their customers, then the banks profit from the transaction, and finally the customer will choose if they would like to pay the fee or not. By looking at the credit card companies, businesses, banks, and customers, this has brought light to the situation to consider.
That sounds good.